Hey guys, before we can talk about what really happened in Masca, we need to understand the key evidence, or lack of it, behind Jay Slater's final phone activity. And that starts with BTS data. And no, not the K-pop group. We're talking about base transceiver stations, BTS for short, also known as cell towers. These towers are what your phone connects to when you make a call, send a text, or use mobile data. And those connections are tracked by your mobile provider in the form of what's known as a BTS ping. Every time your phone interacts with a tower, the network logs it, the ID of the tower, the exact time, and a rough location based on where that tower's signal can reach. In urban areas, that might be a few hundred meters. But in mountainous, remote terrain, like the area around Masca in Tenerife, that radius can easily stretch to 2, 3, even 5 kilometers. And it's far from precise. This is not GPS. It's not live location. It's network-based positioning. And it's one of the first tools police use in missing persons cases. Which brings us to the question at the center of this video. Was Jay Slater's phone ever actually located in Masca via BTS data? This is where things start to raise even more serious questions. Based on everything that's been made public so far, including court records, media coverage, and technical findings, there appears to be no confirmed evidence that Jay's phone ever connected to a BTS tower in Masca at all. While no data was returned in the officio, it's important to acknowledge that the absence of BTS logs doesn't entirely rule out the possibility of a short or unrecorded connection. In fact, the idea that he was last seen in Masca may come not from any network data but from a single screenshot, a GPS pin that Jay reportedly shared with his friends Lucy and Brad through a messaging app like WhatsApp or Snapchat. Now, while that screenshot may indeed show his location, it's not forensic. It's not logged by the mobile network. It's not time-stamped by a carrier. It doesn't prove tower connection. It just proves that someone shared a pin. Let's be really clear here. When people say Jay's phone pinged in Masca, they're usually not quoting any official telecom record. So let's take a moment to go directly to the court document itself, the actual legal file submitted by Spanish authorities, and look at what it really says about Jay's phone and the data they tried to get. Here's the exact quote in Spanish. En fecha 18 de junio de 2024 se dicta auto acordando la geolocalización de su teléfono móvil. Se libró oficio para la obtención de datos de las antenas BTS con los resultados negativos. Translated into English. On June 18, 2024, a court order, auto, was issued authorizing the geolocation of his mobile phone. An official request, oficio, was issued to obtain data from BTS antennas, with negative results. A Spanish auto is a court-issued authorization. In this case, giving police the legal power to track Jay's phone in real time if it ever reconnected to the mobile network. That was signed off on June 18th, just one day after he was reported missing. The officio, on the other hand, is a formal written request sent to mobile carriers. It asks them to provide any existing records showing which cell towers, BTS antennas, Jay's phone had connected to in the past. In other words, where had his phone been before and after he disappeared? And the outcome? Resultados negativos. Negative results. That suggests no call records, no tower pings, no mobile data handshakes, or at least none that were retained or retrievable. So while we can't say with 100% certainty that the phone never connected, the negative result makes it highly likely there was no recorded tower activity at all that morning. Now let's look more closely at what the officio request actually tells us about Jay's last known connection, or rather, the lack of one. It's also possible the request only asked for tower data from the moment of the screenshot location, around 8:21 a.m. on June 17th. Onward. But that would be highly unusual. In missing persons cases, especially when foul play is not ruled out, it's standard for telecom requests to include the last 24 to 48 hours of tower activity, sometimes more, to help reconstruct a person's movements leading up to the disappearance. If the request really was limited to that later time window, it would help explain why no earlier tower data was returned. But it would also be highly unusual and introduce further uncertainty, especially since Playa de las Americas is a well-covered urban area, where phone usage would almost certainly have triggered tower activity. The lack of any such data makes the absence even more surprising if that time frame wasn't included. We'd like to introduce another inconsistency from what we've heard or seen from Lucy. She claims that Jay called her, but the times have constantly changed. She did show proof of the call, we believe, to Haley Comet. But the strange thing is that the screenshot she provided showed an outbound call to Jay Slater that lasted 2 minutes at 8:44 a.m. Jay's last location was shared on the path down into the Juan Lopez ravine at 8:21 a.m. And in that screenshot, it was shown as updated 28 minutes ago, meaning the screenshot itself was taken at 8:49 a.m. If Jay's battery had been low, or if he'd continued deeper into the ravine, it's highly likely that either the battery or the signal would have cut out before 8:44. So if we speculate, and we must stress this is speculative, it's known that Jay also had another phone, which was eventually found charging in the hotel room and handed to the Guardia Civil. Could this be the Jay Slater that Lucy phoned at 8:44? And it's important that we don't forget, Jay had 2 phones with him in Tenerife. That second device adds a layer of complexity that can't be ignored. Because many internet-based apps, like FaceTime, iMessage, WhatsApp, Snapchat, and even Instagram calls, can be used from either phone as long as they're logged into the same Apple ID or social account and connected to Wi-Fi or mobile data. That means an outbound or inbound communication on one device doesn't necessarily tell us which physical handset was in use. A WhatsApp message could be answered from one phone, while the other remains idle. A missed FaceTime call could ring to both. If Lucy used WhatsApp to try and reach Jay, it's entirely plausible that both phones would have alerted, depending on their connection status. This overlap makes it even harder to determine what device she was actually in contact with, and whether it was in Jay's possession or someone else's. And this matters because receiving a standard voice call, as that screenshot suggests, would typically generate a BTS event on Jay's phone if it was online. In Spain, under data retention legislation, telecom providers are required to store those records for 2 years. So if Jay's phone had received that call while connected to a tower, it should have left a trace. Yet the court-requested BTS data came back empty. These are the kinds of gaps in clarity that make precise timeline reconstruction so critical. Because when the official data goes silent, and the stories around it start to shift, speculation fills the void. And that's exactly why every detail matters. As we've discussed the legal process earlier, let's now shift to an equally important topic: the framework behind accessing phone data. This legal reality reveals something critical that a lot of people overlook. Law enforcement can't just access someone's phone data whenever they feel like it. They need legal authorization. That's what the auto and the officio were: formal court-approved mechanisms to allow investigators to get the data they need. And even then, nothing came back. So when creators like Rich and Ruby claim they've somehow seen phone data from Jay's friends, or that they know what tower he connected to, that's not just misleading. It's almost certainly false. They're not police. They don't have warrants. And if the Spanish authorities couldn't get any usable phone data through a court process, there's no way a pair of YouTubers have gotten more. It's also worth remembering that in the UK, the same rules apply. Police cannot just start trawling through someone's private phone usage. They must go before a judge or magistrate and show reasonable grounds to gain access. Without that, they can't do it, legally or technically. So if Spanish police had to go through a legal process to request tower data for a missing person, it's simply not credible to think random online creators are sitting on more advanced information than the actual investigators. Because we don't solve cases through fantasy and speculation. We try to solve them through truth, law, and evidence, even when the official record leaves gaps. And just before we wrap, remember this: Jay had 2 phones with him in Tenerife, and many apps, WhatsApp, iMessage, FaceTime, can work across both. That single fact could change how we interpret every message, every missed call, and every screenshot. It reminds us to be cautious, thorough, and to always question what we think we know. Thanks for watching. And as always, we look forward to reading your thoughts and opinions in the comments below.